Hey guys, Brent Hull here at Winterthur, another one of our videos on federal style. So we've looked at Georgian, we've looked at high style and low style Georgian. We're gonna look at federal, the high style federal things that happened here in America between 1780 and 1820. There is a rich plethora of design here, and I sometimes think that we aren't really using the full playbook. We're using one sheet and there's a full book of ideas that we can be inspired by. We're gonna look at the federal era design, the high style stuff, because there's federal era buildings that weren't necessarily real high style. So we'll look at the things from Philadelphia and from wealthy clients and wealthy homes from this period. Should be a lot of fun. Come check it out today in Winterthur. This is a federal mantle, okay? So from the federal period, the 1800s, right? How do I know? What are the details? Well, see this little detailing, the little bead and reel and that little eye dental? It's called an eye because it looks like a dot on an eye. The little detailing up there at the top is lighter and daintier, part of the neoclassical movement. And so if you just want to look at and be inspired, right? The pilasters and how thin those little flutes are, the brackets that support the mantel shelf, you'll see those elements over and over again over doorways, and this bracketing of this carving in here is all part of that style. Other thing, then it's a little bit outside of my wheelhouse, but Mr. DuPont was a genius in design, right? He was hired by the White House. Jacqueline Kennedy hired him to help redo at the White House. Look at some of the things he's done here, and this window treatment, right? At the same time, you're going to see chairs that pick up that same kind of drop pendant detail. It is a wonderful, subtle little detail that pulls the room together. So you'll see it on pieces of furniture. The colors in the drapes are oftentimes inspired by the colors on the outside of the home that you can see beautifully on this side. So subtle things you'll pick up and subtle things you'll see here that just are magical. Okay, so it's called the Baltimore room, but it's actually because the furniture comes from Baltimore. This is another Philadelphia room, right? And so we are in the federal period now. This is 1812. Notice the details and the ornamentation. The room on the other side of that doorway has moldings that come off the wall 3 inches, right? These are much more subdued, right? And so we don't see the same kind of detailing, right? We've changed from that Georgian to the federal era. This kind of ornamentation and detailing were things that they saw at Pompeii. They were the decorations they saw on the walls, and so that urn and the scrolling volute and swags are very popular in that period. You see the same thing in that fireplace as well. Notice too that in the entablature, right, that the columns support the entablature over the doorway, the frieze is exaggerated. You see it too, the same thing on your mantle there. The frieze is exaggerated in size and scaled compared to the other elements, and that's where that decoration goes. Another thing you might wonder, like in the Victorian period, in the 1870s, 80s, the rosette becomes really popular. Why? Well, if you see in this federal room, that top is a really pretty flower up there in the corner. It's a corner block, okay? It's the same kind of header block you see in Victorian architecture. The Brent Hull theory is that the Victorians are looking back at the federal and how can we make some of these details? How can we copy that element? Well, there's one of those elements, and you're going to see that a few times in these federal rooms, a pretty little corner block that I believe the Victorians were copying in the 1870s and 1880s, looking back at those elements that used to be so expensive, all of a sudden were very attainable for the average, homeowner at that time. Again, example of how the Victorian era, with industrialization tries to copy things from the past. There's an example of it in the early 1800s. Now we're in Chestertown. This is a 1780s room, and really you're seeing this kind of difference between Georgian and federal all in one place. Now, typically a Georgian room has full panel walls. Federal rooms often don't have that. But because this really is bridging the gap between that Georgian era, pre-Revolutionary War, and then post-Revolutionary War, you're seeing elements of both. The detailing around the cornice, you'll see this fretwork detailed, and that's really more federal. And yet we've got full paneled walls in here. We've got an overmantel on top of our mantel, right? Again, another kind of more Georgian element. So a real mix in this room. There's wonderful brackets underneath the windows. Notice how the casing comes down and sweeps out at the bottom. There's so much going on in here, and it's a very small room. I mean, it's 12 by 14. It's not very big. Finally, the ceiling is actually a Georgian ceiling, comes from Port Royal in Philadelphia. People at times will often say, hey, how do I treat my ceiling? What kind of medallions go there? This is a wonderful plaster element that goes around that is dainty, that's wonderful, that's beautifully made. So check out these details. This room's one of my favorites. Okay, so 1822, we're in Montmorenci. This is from North Carolina. A beautifully detailed house, okay, a little bit over the top. You're gonna see a lot of decoration in here. If you look at the chair rail, there's a wonderful little gouge carved swag that goes around a little kind of little circle detail. The paneling underneath these windows, and look at the decoration over top of those windows. Really elevated and really high style. See a beautiful fan light over here, and of course the stair behind me, right? What a magical staircase that is, as it sweeps up and it actually goes up 3 floors. And so this is a pretty awesome space. The Pont's actually, their family room is Marlborough room, which is right behind me. Again, you go from 1744 to 1822, and just the differences that are happening architecturally in these spaces is incredible. One of the other interesting details is this crown. Okay, so it's not a typical classical crown with bed mold. This moldings and these details actually creep up onto the ceiling, which you see in the federal era. Typically a Georgian cornice is at a 45-degree angle, and the federal cornices tend to creep up a little bit more like a 60-degree angle. So you see some of that element, but it's heavily ornamented. And so when you look at that cornice, you really see how high style this room and this house is in that federal time. So 1805, 1810, Salem, New Jersey. This is the blue room. This was her bedroom. This is DuPont's bedroom. It's a federal room, right? So it's a federal period room. You see it in that mantle, the large frieze, the decoration in the frieze, the kind of, typical decoration we begin to see so far. The door headers are probably, and this is a big statement, probably the prettiest door headers at Winterthur, right? And that's saying a lot. I really, really love them. I think the composition is beautiful. The casing going around the outside with the gouge carving lightens them up. And then you've got these beautiful swags and the way that it's built out with the little kick out at the top. There's a little panel in there. It's just a fabulous door header, and it's so pretty. The colors in here are wonderful, right? The light blue color, but a fabulous room. This kind of shows some restraint, right? There's not a lot of crazy moldings in here, but the ones that are in here are awesome. So check out this room. Door headers magical. Fireplace is great. Good details, all in that federal period at 1805. Okay, so 1812, what period is that? Federal, that's right. So we're in the federal period. This is called the McIntyre room. Of course, one of my building heroes, Samuel McIntyre, was a furniture maker, designer, builder, and carver, okay? So his furniture is really a lot of what's in here. This room would have been a typical, it was actually kind of a showroom. Robert Welford was a compo manufacturer. Now, compo was an applied carving where you would actually take wood shavings, you would take animal hide glue, you'd take molasses, and you'd create this mush, and you would put it into molds. So you'd have carved molds, and all this decoration you see around here would have been carved. You still can get compo molding today. Decorator Supply still has it, and you actually steam it, and the glues come out and actually sticks onto the wood. So as you look around this room, a lot of the details that we've seen in the frieze, the large frieze and the decoration, the swags and the urns, the reason why the swag and the urns and those things are so typical of this period is because you could actually buy them from catalogs and you could order these kind of compositions. So As you look around this room, as you check out this beautiful arch, as you check out that mantle, and you look at the detail, realize that it's compo moldings, that this was something very popular that Robert Adam, Adam-esque in England, actually made very popular because they had seen it in Pompeii. And so a lot of these details were copied from the past and then reproduced like this. It was really kind of the first time that you could, make these things faster and easier than they had been made in the past. Instead of hand carving them, they would have been a composition applied molding. So fun stuff, 1812, the salesman's house, right? And so you see a lot of compo in here, really good stuff that you see in other parts of Winterthur as well. 1790s, this is a house from Connecticut, Suffield, Connecticut. Asher Benjamin actually has some attributions from this room. He worked on this house. We're not sure exactly in what format, but to think one of my building heroes actually worked here is really exciting for me. So you have a federal style room, which means, right, you see that typical federal detailing I hope you're used to now, where you see the exaggerated frieze, the decoration in that frieze, that applied compo molding. You see the same thing over the doorway. There's some interesting details in here. You've got these corner pilasters that go up. They're fluted pilaster. They're thin in scale, and they go up and support a little mini entablature, and then the cornice wraps the room. The cornice has a unique little modillion, and if you compare these modillions to like a Georgian modillion, they've shrunken in scale. They're a little bit smaller. There's an overmantel here. Typically, you don't see an overmantel in the federal period. So, 1790s, maybe we're early in the federal period, but we're still seeing a mix, right? There's no concrete rules. You have to do these things. And so when you see examples like this, and that overmantel certainly has all the federal detailing. We have this French wallpaper, which mimics really a lot of those things that were coming out of Pompeii and Herculaneum, where you are seeing this kind of detailing that would have shown up on the walls of the homes of those houses, which is why we changed from the heavy Georgian to the light federal, is because we saw how the Romans were living and we changed the decoration accordingly. So great room, very important room, obviously great craftsmanship here, but great federal detailing, 1790, Connecticut, great stuff. Okay guys, what'd you think? Amazing stuff, right? Those architectural details in there are the cream of the crop. They're the finest things from the past, right? That we can learn from today. If you're a builder wanting to build better, if you're a homeowner wanting to build something beautiful, an architect, a craftsman, in here you're gonna find great details, whether it's Georgian, Federal, or Greek Revival. So thanks for joining us. I'm Brent Hull, and thanks for watching.